Hello friends, and happy Mountain Monday. Today we're going to be talking about some of the camera equipment and associated gear that I brought with on my hike of the Arizona Trail. This video is a little bit more for the backpacking content creators out there to let you in on a little bit of what I used, what I carried, and the strategies around that. So stick around. When I first thought about making a video like this, I wanted to include the techniques and the equipment. I kind of discovered through creating this video though that the techniques would be better suited for a separate video. So today we are just specifically talking about the equipment that I used, and a few weeks down the road I'll be doing a whole video on some of the techniques I used and how I felt that I grew as a filmmaker through this whole experience. So definitely keep your eye out for that. Be sure you subscribe down below so you're around for when I put out that video. So let's get started a little bit about the filming equipment I used. First and foremost, the most important piece of gear that I carried for recording is what you are currently watching me on. It is a GoPro Hero 7 Black camera. It's extremely lightweight for what it can do. It can record all sorts of different resolutions, different types of photos, long exposure, short exposure, fast shutter speed. It can even go underwater. It has amazing stabilization technology on board as well, making it so much better than some of the younger variants of the Hero series. I used to own a Hero 4 Black back in the day, and it didn't have any sort of stabilization. So, you know, you'd be walking down trail and just be shaky. It'd be a whole mess. And that made trying to share these sorts of videos really difficult. Albeit there are a few drawbacks, such as the accessories being astronomically priced through GoPro. Like, absolutely egregiously, horribly priced. So if you were to get a GoPro camera like this one for your adventure, I'd highly recommend the Hero 7. I know the Hero 8 came out while I was on trail. I don't have much to say about that. And I've heard good things about the Max because it's like a 360-degree camera. If I were to give you one solid piece of advice for owning and using a GoPro system, buy your accessories third party. It's going to be made out of the same cheap plastic that GoPro is using. Just going to cost you a third of the price. But buy name brand batteries. On my backpacking trip, I used some Chinese batteries, and their capacity just was not the same. The batteries were a lot more sensitive to heat and cold than the GoPro name brand battery that came with the camera. But the charging mount that came with all those Chinese batteries, or the charging bank, it lets you charge 3 at once and plug that into a micro USB type thing. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But that little 3 charger definitely came in handy, but the batteries are definitely a lot less reliable. I would charge them up, they'd say they'd be 100%, and then I'd plug them into the camera, I'd see 100%, and then literally 70%, 50%, 20%. And then it would stay on like 20%, even though it said it was fully charged. And I charged it the whole night. It would just not be holding a good charge compared to the name brand GoPro batteries. So I would highly, highly recommend GoPro name brand batteries, but third-party mounts to save you some money. It's a great camera. It's great for talking as you're walking, getting B-roll, anything like that. It's a great camera, and you can really do a lot with it, and it's really cheap in comparison to what you would need to get to do a full DSLR, like a full frame, even if it's mirrorless, whatever, camera setup for what this GoPro can do. This size, this weight, and its capability definitely make it a very, very good camera, so I would highly recommend it. Moving on a little bit, this is the main still camera I used. I didn't take as much video as I wish I did with this, but going back to the stabilization that the GoPro has, this did not have that sort of stabilization. So it made it a little bit harder to use. This is my Sony A6300 mirrorless camera. And it came with a kit lens that goes from 18 to 135 millimeter. This definitely came in handy for far off things, or if I was trying to get animal photography or video. I'll plug some of that in here. This camera makes an absolutely beautiful picture. In my opinion, it's a little bit better than the GoPro, because the GoPro kind of has that fisheye effect on it kind of always, whereas this is just a mirrorless digital camera. And that makes a big difference for weight. As you can see, it's really small and it's lightweight. Compared to a DSLR, there's a big heavy mirror in there. So that was definitely a reason why I picked up this camera for my hike, that weight saving. And then I had that kit lens, as I said, 135 to 18 millimeter. That was really good for zooming in or being very zoomed out. It's pretty standard lens though. The f-stop doesn't go too low. And yes, this is kind of photography jargon. I apologize for that. I'm more than happy to answer any of these questions. If you are confused, just message me in the comments, message me during the premiere, send me questions over on Instagram at trailtime.jake. But anyway, this isn't a full frame mirrorless, so it's a little bit cheaper, but that comes with some other limitations. But that's getting way into sensor technology, and that's definitely beyond the purview of this video. The reason I went with the 6300 model specifically is it actually has a external microphone port, whereas a lot of mirrorless cameras that are, I guess, of this price point don't come with that feature a lot. And I actually used a Rode Video microphone for the first 200 miles of the AZT, but I found I wasn't recording myself much with this camera. In hindsight, I wish I did that a bit more because the audio and video looks a lot better than the GoPro, especially in windy situations. But this combo is definitely going to be doing a lot of work for me this year. And I plan on using it a lot more now that I'm getting a little bit more into videography and photography. So it kind of all fits together like this. This is obviously a little windsock. And I bought this all as a bundle together, so I saved a bit of money on it. But that's the reason I specifically went with this camera. There are definitely better still photography cameras on the market for this price point. There's definitely better video cameras on the market for this price point. But I wanted one that would do both, and that was lightweight. And this was the happy compromise that I found for myself. The Sony A6300. I also used a second lens that I picked up. This is a Sigma 30mm prime lens. And I actually lost the lens cap in passage 41 or 42. So if anyone found that and is watching this video, I know it's highly unlikely, but maybe get it back to me. This lens is awesome. It is only at 30mm though, so it's not super zoomed in, not super zoomed out. But the thing that made this lens really important for my kit, and the reason that I bought it for this camera, is it has a really, really low f-stop. So that means it does low light photography extremely well. And I kind of am a freak for star photography. I really like photography and videography that makes the audience feel small or feel like they're connected to something bigger than themselves. That's really a huge driver for my creative pursuits, and this sort of lens could really accomplish that, as you can see with some of this photography here. And it really wasn't that expensive of a lens through Sigma. It's a pretty well-known company, but they have pretty decent budget lenses. I think it was around $200, which in the world of lenses, believe it or not, is actually pretty cheap. Would highly recommend that. I know a lot of folks, especially thru-hikers, they want just one lens that is a one and done type thing, and this kit lens definitely could accomplish that. it just can't do the low light star stuff super well. And that's really why I wanted a secondary lens. So this is definitely a luxury. You don't need this. The kit lens in this situation definitely would have worked just for standard vlogging. But that's what I carried, and that's what I got use out of. I got a lot of use out of both lenses. They're both fantastic lenses, and I'd highly recommend them both. And this camera is absolutely amazing. It takes some of the cleanest pictures, and it is super lightweight, so it is really good for backpacking. I got an insurance policy on the camera, actually, and I dropped it about a month ago. The tripod kind of dropped it. It kind of collapsed. And I actually got my money's worth out of that insurance policy, luckily for me. I got a two-year extended warranty type thing on it when I bought the camera, knowing that I was going to be bringing it on the Arizona Trail and basically putting it through hell. And I'm grateful that I did that. It gave me some more peace of mind. One of the huge issues, though, moving on to sort of next piece of the camera kit, is dust and dirt. And it's not good to be like wiping it off with your Columbia PFG shirt that feels like it's made out of cardboard almost. You want something softer, so like a nice microfiber cloth can make a huge difference out there. There were so many photos that I had to go in post and edit out all the little dirt blobs and stuff like that would get in the way. And that's another reason why I didn't record with this much on trails, because getting those little dirt pieces out in video is much more difficult. But I'd highly recommend carrying some cleaning stuff like that, a microfiber cloth, maybe one of those little dust blowers. I thought I brought one of them out with me. Must be inside still, but you don't want to be manhandling the internals of your camera when you're covered in dirt. That's really not going to work out with much success for you. So really take good care of your gear, and you want to limit taking off that lens as much as possible. And you might want to consider getting an insurance policy if you bring a big camera like this out with you. I also bought one of those little hand straps that goes on the side of the camera. A lot of thru-hiker videographers really recommend that because it's easier to hold on to with one hand that way. I didn't really like it. I'll put in the exact product name of what the little strap is called. The name escapes me right now, but I'll put it up right here. I didn't like it though because this little screw that's on the bottom to put this on a tripod, like this one, little screw on top of it, kind of bolts in here. In order to put the handle on here, I wasn't able to put it on a tripod at that point. And I actually had to take off the neck strap as well. So that didn't make much sense to me, and I didn't really like that. So I didn't get any use out of that. I bought it and it sat in a closet this whole time, and it kind of makes me sad. So definitely don't do that if you don't foresee yourself getting any use out of that. As I said, I'll put the product name up here. I would not recommend that. I thought I would get more use out of it than I did, and I found it really not. It took away a lot of the features of this camera that I kind of needed, and it kind of just got in my way. So wouldn't recommend that. Another camera accessory I would recommend is a shutter switch. So on board this camera, you can go up to a 30-second shutter speed, and that's really good for low light. But if you want to go beyond that, you have to get a button. So you can push this down and then your shutter's open. You can slide it forward and it'll stay open. I think the longest exposure I've ever done with this thing is around 20 minutes for this photo here. And that's what allows you to get those cool star trails, is a little shutter switch like that. So I'd highly recommend that if you're trying to get into that sort of photography. I'll be covering some more of those techniques that you need to accomplish that effect in that technique video in a few weeks, as I was saying at the beginning. So definitely keep your eye out for that. But that's something you will need if you want to get into that sort of style of photography. That kind of wraps it up for the Sony camera. Zip that up. This was a camera case I had just laying around my house. I think it was my grandmother's. So I just kind of use this. It's by GoPro. I don't even know if that's a company that makes stuff anymore or if they still make this model. but it was small, compact, could clip my secondary lens off the side. It worked for me. So it was lightweight, but protective. Moving on to some of the mounts then. So this is the Pedco UltraPod 2. And this thing can support the GoPro as like a little hand mount. It works really well. It could also support the full camera though. You just needed to kind of balance it out. This is one of the lightest tripods on the market. It's only a few ounces. I think it's, I'll put the specific weight right here. It's that many ounces. And I actually carried 2 of these so that I could use the GoPro on one and the Sony on another. Wow. Some screaming children. So I brought 2 of these, thinking that I'd want to put my Sony on one of them, the GoPro on the other. I didn't do that, so I ended up taking the second one out of my bag about halfway through the trail. But this is honestly a really great mount. I was actually using this one in some pretty crazy currents underwater just 2 days ago, and it held up really well. You can't even tell. And obviously, it's a tripod. It's kind of low to the ground though. That's my only issue with it. In order to get some really cool angles, you need to have a little bit more height to it. But I really wasn't willing to carry a heavy-duty tripod like what the camera is currently sitting on, because the one the camera is currently sitting on, I think, weighs around 2 pounds. So I was really willing to kind of maybe strap this to a branch or something to get those angles when I needed to. There's definitely creative ways to navigate that issue. But these tripods don't cost that much money. I think they're between $10 and $20 each. And as I said, they're really lightweight. And you can just stuff these in your bag. They're really, really good. And they have rubberized feet, so it grips onto surfaces better than, say, just a random plastic tripod. So would really recommend those. They're really good. Continuing on, recording stuff. This was added to my kit for the last little push of the AZT, my last week out there after I took my winter hiatus. This was a Christmas gift, actually. It is a DJI Mavic Mini. It only weighs 250 something grams altogether for this, and it folds out, has a gimbal, all that good stuff, flies around. This thing is really a champion, and it's really great for getting just unique, beautiful angles on where you're hiking. My big problem is out of this battery in the back here, and I haven't been able to even buy a spare battery yet because the supply chain's been so messed up on them. One of these batteries only lasts 30 minutes, which honestly is pretty good. This is the majority of the weight of this thing though. Once you slide out this battery, this thing doesn't weigh anything. So carrying multiple batteries starts getting weight prohibitive. Not to mention it's cost prohibitive, being you can only buy them through DJI right now, and they're like 30 bucks more expensive than like Adorama or some of the other videography outlets, I guess you could say. And the other problem I had with this is it likes just randomly starting to descend out of the sky. Even if you're pushing up on the stick saying, no, fly up, please. It'll start doing some weird stuff. And I am afraid to fly it in any sort of windy conditions. I would not recommend that because it is so lightweight. It doesn't have any sort of side sensors, so you can fly it into objects. You can't land it on an uneven surface. It'll not let you do that. But there are also some really cool things you can do with it automatically on your phone. You use your phone kind of as the remote. And there are automatic shots that you can set up, like one that's called a droney. Obviously, they're making fun of a selfie. And that's this clip right here from my intro. That was shot using one of those automatic flight paths. This one here is using a spiral type flight path. And all that is just set automatically on your phone. So the usability of this, it's very intuitive for a user to pick this up and be able to shoot some really pretty shots with it. But it gets a little bit more technical when you're trying to bring it out on a thru hike. Keeping this thing charged up, probably is going to be really difficult. It will drain your battery banks. So I would really probably not recommend carrying one of these on a through hike. Maybe on a section of your through hike where you're meeting up with someone to resupply. That's where I got all my use out of this thing, was when I was being slack packed for the last few days of the trail. I was able to go back to a base camp each night and charge it up. So that allowed me a lot more freedom with this thing, just not worrying about the batteries. Underneath this though, now that kind of wraps up all the recording devices, here's where it all gets stored on. I carried a bunch of these little micro SD cards. Anyone who's familiar with videography is probably familiar with these. One of the big things that I learned through this experience is that there's a bunch of different types of cards. Okay, so there's like the SanDisk Ultra, or the SanDisk Ultimate, or different Samsung ones. They're priced differently because they have different capabilities. That was something I didn't even comprehend, something I didn't even care to think about. Like, there's a $10 card versus a $60 card. I'm going to get the $10 card. They're the same capacity. No, they are not. So I have some SD cards in here that I will plug into the GoPro and it'll say, oh, we cannot write 4K on this card because it doesn't have a fast enough write speed. Oh, okay. So now you go out and you buy the $60 SD card and lo and behold, it works perfectly. So you definitely want to look into what sort of things you need to be compatible with your camera, at your frame rate, at your resolution, all those things to determine what sort of SD cards you want. Luckily, since I'm doing still photography on this one, I'm doing 4K photography on this one, and I'm doing 2.7K photography on the drone, I could find a use case for each of my different cards of varying quality. You know, obviously I'm just doing stills. I only need a UH1 card, maybe just an SD, whereas for a 4K 60 frame per second recording, I need a UH3 SDXC card, and that's a lot more expensive. And the prices change depending on those different compatibilities. So do your own research on your camera you plan to use. I know GoPro has a good list of all the different cards that are compatible with their camera. So I definitely would read up on that if you're going to use this sort of system. I know they make it pretty available. Sony does similarly. All right, so that's camera, recording, all of that blanket. Now we're on to some of the accessories that I brought that were specific to allowing me to record day after day, even when I was in the middle of nowhere. Most crucially, and I talked about these in the last video, battery banks. You need plenty of juice out there in order to keep all of your stuff with enough energy. This is an Anker PowerCore 13,000 milliamp hour. I bought this many moons ago. I don't think they even make this size anymore, but I decided that wasn't enough, so I needed to get the 21,000 on top of that. By the middle of the hike, I was able to get by with just one of these between resupplies. This would last me like 5 days, and that's charging my headlamp, my Garmin, 4 GoPro batteries, 3 Sony batteries. I didn't ever charge the drone off of it. As I said, I only use that if I was getting slack packed. And my phone. That was what else I was charging off of it. And these do weigh a little bit of weight. I think between the two of these, it's somewhere between a pound and 2 pounds. But having the ease of mind that you don't need to be rationing every single drop of battery you have definitely was nice. And it helped keep me confident for being able to do my job out there with recording and sharing my experience. So I would highly recommend. Anker is a great brand. And a little thing for you fall southbounders, it's probably going to be cold when you start out, especially if you start out around late September, early October. 20-degree nights, batteries don't like the super, super cold. So you might have to snuggle with your batteries in your sleeping bag. I did that a lot of nights, basically, until I got below the Mogollon Rim. And that helps your batteries stay with their juice in it. If you don't sleep with this and it's a 20-degree night, you might find that, oh, half my battery just got sapped. It's gone. It's to the cold. So definitely snuggle your batteries. Treat them well. Because they truly are what's powering your operation. Here's my Sony battery bank, and here is my GoPro battery bank. So both these run off of a micro USB, and both of these are third-party docks with third-party batteries. I would not recommend the third-party batteries, but these docks that come with them are definitely helpful on both accounts. The third-party batteries for the Sony, in my opinion, really weren't that bad. Maybe it's because I put my GoPro through more extreme stuff than the Sony, though. I think both these packs, with the batteries and the charger, because the Sony is actually only wall charged with the normal charger. The GoPro, it's just you plug in the camera to charge it. So these expand how many batteries you can charge at once, and they come with these extra batteries. Good, bad, or indifferent, it is extra power. And it's really not that expensive for these. I think both of them were between 10 and 20 bucks. 4 extra batteries and the dock as a kit. So it's definitely good to have a few extra batteries ready to go. So if something really cool happens and your camera's on like 6%, you just need to switch them out really quick, then you're ready to keep recording the memorable, important stuff that's going on in front of you. So having a few different batteries to cycle through definitely proved to be helpful. I'd highly recommend that. A little power brick. So when you get to civilization, you can charge up all this stuff. It's important to look for a brick that has a high amperage. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Then lastly, out of this red bag, which is, I'd put this inside of my food bag so it was double waterproofed. And this was for all the batteries. And then the drone remote. This plugs into your phone and kind of does one of these. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward if you own a drone. Really not that hard to set up, but important that you keep that protected. So I always kept it in a big red, or a small red dry bag, so that I knew that this is where all my batteries were at. This is where my power is. I could find this in the dark. Very easy to do. And as I said, I'd keep that double bagged in my food dry bag. Aside from if it was hanging in the tree, of course, for my bear bag. And then lastly, all of your power cables that you're going to need. So obviously you don't want to carry more cables than you need. But obviously you want to carry more cables, or enough cables so you can charge your stuff if you need to. So I knew between these battery banks, there's 4 USB ports. So I could charge up to 4 items at once. So I had 4 charging cables. Everything either ran off of the Apple charger, that's my phone. Everything else ran off of micro USB. So I found some of the smallest micro USB cables I could find to save the weight. So then I could charge my Garmin, I could charge my Sony batteries, I could charge my GoPro batteries, I could charge my Garmin off of these, I could charge my headlamp off of these. It was pretty much everything that I would need. So this I could charge through every single charging port on my batteries at the same time if I needed to. I really tried to get it down to where I would charge things as I'd need it, so there would usually be 1 or 2 things plugged in. So I probably could have gotten away with carrying only 1 or 2 of these, and that's okay. But that changed when you hit town or you resupply. One of these little Anker Power Core USB splitters allows you to plug into your battery, and you can plug in as many different devices to this as you want. Conversely, you could also plug this into the wall, and then, okay, I can charge 4 things at once off of 1 wall outlet instead of just 1 item. So that made recharging in town a lot quicker or recharging from my parents' camper when they'd come to resupply me. It's made it a lot quicker, including when I was using the drone, because I would just be charging up like 10 things every night. My headlamp, my Garmin, my GoPro batteries, my Sony batteries, my phone battery. So having a splitter, and the Anchor one really isn't that heavy, can really come in handy, especially when you're getting to a trail town. These Anchor batteries, like this one, plugged into a normal wall outlet by itself, takes like 8 hours to fully recharge. It's ridiculous. If you go a size up from this, it actually has 2 charging ports. So you could plug it into 2 wall sockets at the same time, because it takes that long to actually charge one of these things up. So it's really important that your little brick has a high amperage if you plan to use one of these splitters. We're going to get into electrical engineering really quick, or some electronic physics. So voltage, if you want to think about it this way, is the speed of the current. Think of a wire like it's a river. The voltage is the speed of the water, whereas the amperage is the size of the river. Or if you want to think about it as like water in a pipe, the speed of the water versus the diameter of the pipe. So you want a high amperage charging block. So when you plug it into this 4 splitter, each of these is still getting a decent amount of that flow, if that makes sense. Whereas if you have a really small amperage, let's say it's designed to just charge like your cell phone, I think that's like a 1/2 amp or something like that, it's going to charge everything off of this splitter much slower, significantly slower. So it's important you keep an eye out. I'm sure you have some sort of item in your house that came with a charging block. Out of all your different charging blocks you probably have at your house, find the one that has the highest amperage, and that should be the one, or maybe carry 2 of them on your hike. That pretty much wraps it up then for all the equipment that I carried on the Arizona Trail. I really hope you guys enjoyed this series. I know I had a bunch of fun talking about the gear that I carried, and kind of using the knowledge I have now, going back and dissecting it, thinking about what I may do differently on a future hike. I hope you learned something through these videos, and I hope that I helped you plan out your adventure. As always, feel free to send any of the questions you may have my way as your hike grows a bit closer. Send emails to trailtime96@gmail.com, or direct message me over on Instagram at trailtime.jake. I'm more than happy to take any of your questions, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Stay safe, good luck on your adventures, and I'll see you guys next time. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, so you're here for the next video. Y'all take it easy.